Good afternoon, Tony Dottino, doing my Live with Tony on Monday. And believe it or not, it is already June the 5th. The days seem to be going by quicker than I realized, and the weekends go even faster for some reason than the weekdays. But I wanted to talk this afternoon about an exercise I did in a mental fitness workshop that I was a part of today. And I call it this. I asked the question first of all: why was it important for us as humans to have social interactions? And one of the attendees in the workshop explained that she had suffered a brain injury, and from it, the doctors had told her to stay home in a darkened room and have shades and glasses on because obviously our eyes, our optics, are a direct link into our brains, and they were trying to reduce and stifle the the light that was getting into her eye, and then thus thinking that this was going to help her brain. And she answered the question. She said, "It was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, and having them restrict any of my social interaction. And as I learned more and more about my condition, I realized that they were limiting any growth or any new pathways that I could create by getting out and actually learning and meeting people." And so she gave a fantastic description of her own personal experience of how she was restricted and lost connection with other people, which is one of the things that she did in her life, was constantly going out and meeting people at different conferences and sessions that she was a part of. And then taking that away from her had a much greater negative impact than being locked in a room and restricted her brain development and things, or her plasticity of her brain. It was kind of a sad story because it got me to think of how many doctors are treating what I call silos and isolated symptoms and not realizing the impact of what they're doing on the whole person. And so it even got us to talking a bit about kids today, and the kids that were locked and put into isolation during COVID. And I've talked about this before, but again, it was a group of people with grandchildren that found that their grandkids had really gotten a little bit more rambunctious or felt isolated and losing their friends, and they lost their playmates and they lost their physical activities. And so the people that are in the room shared the negative impacts that had to their own grandchildren. And so again, it was a very well interacted part of a workshop that a group of people were having today that really highlighted in practical experience the impacts that we have when we isolate ourselves and create the feelings of loneliness. And so we got a person, we call them our mystery guest. So we had somebody come up to the room, and the first thing I asked the attendees is, well, what questions would you want to ask somebody that you were meeting and you were trying to learn about them? And so obviously the first thing that somebody jumped up is, the first thing you want to know is, well, what's their name, so you can properly address them, and how would they like to be addressed? Name, Mrs., by first name, second name, Mrs. So-and-so, or Mrs. Smith, or Patricia. I mean, what would be the first thing you'd want to know is obviously their name. And from their name, you might want to know, so where did you grow up? And, where are you from? And where do you live today? Are you always from this community? Have you always lived here? Or did you live somewhere else? And it was fabulous. We learned a whole lot from just where the person lived. And in this particular case, they grew up in Buffalo, New York, in the snow country. And as the snows continue to come in Buffalo every winter, she finally decided it was time to move south and move to a southern climate. But as she was in Buffalo, one of the things she learned to do at a point in time was to skate and skate on ice rinks. And fast forward, she eventually learned how to skate while she was going for her graduate work and became a professional skater that went on tour with the ice shows that went across, as she taught with the group, 40 different cities and had a year, 6 months of learning to skate for the show, and then a whole year of touring, and after that decided to finish up her graduate degree in healthcare. And so it was a really interesting conversation that then got into, so, where do you live today, and are you married, and how long have you been married, and do you have children? And from there it went to how many grandkids do you have, and it was just a fun dialogue of starting off the simplicity of a person's name and where did you grow up and where do you live today, and what were some of the values that you got as you were growing up? What were some things that your environment had as an impact on your life as you were growing up? And so we learned about kindness and compassion, and she cared for her dad, who had a number of illnesses that she had to deal with, and eventually Dad moved in with her and her husband and family, and the grandkids got to know their grandfather in a very special way, and imparted his values of kindness and trust and love. And that just was a whole lot of fun conversation. It was really interesting, as I learned years ago from reading Wayne Dyer, sitting at train stations or airports and meeting people and just having a conversation with people. It's like reading a book, except the book, you don't have to read the book, you have to talk the book. So it's like, books on tape today, you get the opportunity of talking to real people about life stories. And what I've always learned, and I learned this from my mom, is talking to other people about their life experiences is a great way to learn and grow, and just see how other people lived, of all types, of all kinds, it doesn't matter, and just see what the differences are in their values and how they grew up, and what was the most impactful person in their life, and where did they go to school, and did they go to college, or did they go to a trade school, or what do they do for a living, are just all of the different elements that each and every one of us have that make our life to be what it is today. And so sharing those stories and those different elements of caring and kindness and respect are ways that we learn from one another, which is one of the best ways. My mom always says, learn from other people's experience as well as your own, is a really solid way of living a good life. And I got to see that today in this workshop of people who came from different aspects and different parts of their lives, and were learning to meet a person today that they just thought they knew, and thought they knew some things about them, but learned a whole bunch of things that just created a lively conversation of fun, laughing, silly questions. And so it was a good experience for me that just, to me, continues to reinforce something I've talked about many, many times. And all I was trying to do today is share with people how you can start a conversation with someone that's safe and simple to do, but then turns into being very interesting and fun, and getting to see a connection was the key word. They felt like, God, we made a connection here that we hadn't made before, even though we thought we knew who this person was. So I share that again because if we can learn to talk with people, especially in some of the stressful times we have, in a way that isn't confrontational, doesn't immediately start to bang, but just get to learn who they are at a deeper level, and get to understand their values and who they love, and the loved ones they have, and what their family members do, and what about their grandkids, and do they have a favorite one, and have a lot of fun with that. I continue to read all about social interaction and its importance, and I continue to see, meet with people that feel lonely and isolated, and I say, God, how do we get this message out? How do we get some of the people that are in that mode to feel differently and learn some fundamental skills that enable them to get out and be more social and not feel isolated and not feel that they're the last person on the earth and there's nobody else to talk to? That's my Monday Live with Tony, and we're off and going with another week, and I'll be back with you on Wednesday. So have a good week. It's the beginning of it. Let's figure out something new that we might be able to learn. Somebody we may be able to meet and just ask them, how you doing? What's your name? And see where it goes from there.